kind words online. That's really all I've got.
There you go.
And to all the fans who've written in and stuff, it's very sweet. So I really
congratulations.
appreciate that. Yeah, thank you.
We've all met the guy, and I think we approve. I don't want to speak for Matt and Bradley, but
all right. Well,
it was very appropriate.
He really should have called you first, honestly.
He did. I was just going to say, one of the things that really impressed me, I thought, when he called to ask for our permission, and that was great.
Yeah.
We thought, yes, he was a very
very respectful.
Yep.
Good.
He was very respectful young man. So we were very pleased.
Thank you.
All right, let's get into this. Obviously, things continue unabated in Israel's assault on Gaza. They are now allowing for supposedly a 4-hour pause every day to allow people to escape northern Gaza. They are not allowing the Gazans to drive or to use any type of vehicles.
Yeah.
No cars, no bicycles. 6-year-old children, 75-year-old, 80-year-old grandmothers having to walk anywhere from 10 to 12 hours to get to safety.
People are likening it to the modern Trail of Tears.
And you're not allowed to stop. You're not allowed to look backwards on this trek. Reports of Israeli snipers, firing on hospitals. They are around the Shifa hospital. Israel is claiming that there is a big bunker underneath the Shifa hospital. There are varying reports on this. They have, provided supposedly the international community with documents to this effect. But in the past, we've seen them do this, and it turns out not the case. Folks online were citing things like when they had last year had claimed about 8 or 9 NGOs were terrorist organizations. They gave reams of documentation to the EU after basically attacking these organizations, and then months later, the EU decides no, there's nothing here. So very difficult to even make those assessments. Nevertheless, you've got people dying in this hospital because it's all basically completely dysfunctional now. And here is National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan on CNN's Dana Bash. And this is just, one of the things that Matt Duss, who was in visiting us maybe a week or two before this took place, has written, is that the Biden administration's months, almost years long attempt to sort of establish the rules of international relations based upon in the justification for our support of Ukraine fighting back against Russian occupation and invasion. Matt Duss basically said, within a week or two of this conflict, everything they had worked on was up in flames. And here's another example of that.
So much for being here this morning. I just want to be clear. Does Israel need to do more to limit civilian casualties?
Well, first, Dana, every loss of innocent life, Palestinian, Israeli, anyone, is a tragedy, every single one. And we grieve for those who have been lost, those innocent lives who have been lost. At the same time, what Israel is facing is a terrorist enemy who hides among civilians, who uses civilians as human shields. And so it has an added burden of trying to prosecute this campaign against that terrorist group while distinguishing between terrorists and innocent civilians. And that doesn't lessen its responsibility to operate according to the rules of war. And we have continued to make that point both publicly and privately, and we will continue to do so as we go forward.
Is Israel operating according to the rules of war?
Well, Dana, I'm not going to sit here and play judge or jury on that question. What I'm going to do is state the principle of the United States on this issue. which is straightforward. Israel has a right, indeed a responsibility.
All right, just hold on for 1 second. Like, how do you, like, you're stating a principle. You are obligated to do X. Are they doing X? But we're not in a position to assess.
Not my
that.
job.
Yeah.
I mean, it completely makes no sense.
What's the nature of obligation then?
Exactly. And also, if they're just as obligated to follow the rules of war, why are you prefacing it with any of this? I mean, you rarely hear anyone preface with like, actually the international laws that occupied people are allowed to basically practice any means necessary to fight the occupation. You don't hear that so much in the context of before someone refers to Hamas's obligations for humanity, and obviously, like, don't condone those tactics, don't condone the killing of civilians. But I'm just trying to say that, we would never, ever expect anyone to preface what they expect of Hamas in not killing civilians by saying, I mean, technically speaking.
Yeah. If Hamas is so the reason that Hamas should be condemned is because they target civilians, then that doesn't mean that killing them by also killing civilians is justified. Those are contradictory points if you're actually operating in a way that's consistent.
But just go back a little bit, because I want you to sort of like just watch this turn when the most obvious question possible is being asked, which is, you've said that there's an obligation for essentially, a client state to uphold the rules of war, and then you can't make that assessment? Go ahead.
Well, first, Dana, every loss of innocent life, Palestinian, Israeli, anyone, is a tragedy, every single one. And we grieve for those who have been lost, those innocent lives who have been lost. At the same time, what Israel is facing is a terrorist enemy who hides among civilians, who uses civilians as human shields. And so it has an added burden of trying to prosecute this campaign against that terrorist group while distinguishing between terrorists and innocent civilians. And that doesn't lessen its responsibility to operate according to the rules of war. And we have continued to make that point both publicly and privately, and we will continue to do so as we go forward.
Is Israel operating according to the rules of war?
Well, Dana, I'm not going to sit here and play judge or jury on that question. What I'm going to do is state the principle of the United States on this issue, which is straightforward. Israel has a right, indeed a responsibility.
Just to be clear, the United States does not play the role of judge and jury as to whether other nations are engaged in a breach of the rules of war. For instance, let's say, when Russia invades Ukraine, the United States would never, ever make the assessment that, let's say, the Russian military has committed, I'm sorry, here it is, back in 2022, U.S. formally declares Russian military has committed war crimes in Ukraine. So apparently there is an ability for the U.S. to make this assessment.
Not if you're in the friend group, though.
I mean, that's the bottom line, is that there's just a huge steaming pile of horse crap that he's dishing up here.
Yeah.
And
aiding and abetting a deeply terrifying and, again, genocidal narrative about human shields, which continues to justify. That's a pop-up, I guess. Oh, it sounds beautiful. Maybe just bring it down. Yeah. Dang, I lost my train of thought. What was I saying?
I don't know, the mind control music.
Okay, yeah, right. Now I suddenly approve of Israel's actions. But no, I mean, I joke. Obviously, what this does is it allows for the Israeli government to continue using this absolutely absurd on its face. Human Shield's justification. It's the ridiculous claims that they're making about the hospitals being Hamas command centers, essentially, is an extension of that. Bradley, actually, can you just pull up what I sent in Slack earlier, that old historical record of propaganda that has been used in the past for colonial ends? And we don't even maybe need to get to it right now because I know we have a guest, but this historian, it's really quick, a professor at Edinburgh put this up, and I think it's instructive. The bombardment and siege of hospitals accusing the colonized of shielding behind medical facilities has a long history. This is an Italian fascist propaganda trying to justify the targeting of the medical structures of the International Committee of the Red Cross in Ethiopia. And you can just see here how older right-wing propaganda, from around 100 years ago, using that same playbook. And that thread has a few more examples. But the United States, in its lack of consistency on this and its complete hall pass for the Israeli government to continue in their atrocities, they're just furthering old fascist tropes.
We'll obviously talk more about this later in the program. In a moment, we're going to be talking to Malaika Jabali, senior news and politics editor at Essence Magazine, author of It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. First, a couple of words from our sponsors. There's some things you can go to your friends for advice on, but not really for health advice. There's only so much of your own research you can do. Ritual takes the guesswork out of the vitamin game. Their multivitamin for men is based on science to help fill common nutrient gaps in the diet and level up your nutrient goals. It's an all-around win. This stuff is great. For me, the big thing is, it's very hard to know where what vitamins are actually quality and where they're sourced, and where they're sourced is really a huge part of it. That's one of the best things about Ritual, is that you know where your vitamins are coming from, where they get them from, like literally geographically, and this is important. There are certain places that have used certain agricultural products and don't necessarily have the same regulations and requirements, and so Ritual takes that guessing game, takes that guessing part out of the game. The other part is they also send it to you on a regular basis, and so for me, whenever I've tried to take a multivitamin in the past, I get through the first bottle and then I forget, and then I get out of the habit, and then I'm back to day one. But the best thing for me is that my vitamin D levels. I just went to go see the doctor.
Nice.
He said my blood work was good. Yep.
In the winter.
Well, it's also important to me all the time because I spend all the time inside.
Oh.
But it is scientifically developed multivitamin, high quality, key ingredients, clean, bioavailable forms. Ritual is your new type of two-a-days, from helping support heart health with omega-3 DHA to normal muscle function and normal immune function with vitamin D3. This small step can have a major impact. And again, it's made traceable, because where your nutrients come from is just as important as what they're for. It's vegan friendly, it is non-GMO, it is sugar-free, it is gluten-free, it is major allergen-free. And their capsule has a delayed release designed to make it gentle on an empty stomach, which is also really key, because when you have to wait until you eat to take your multivitamins, then you forget, and then you're again. That's the whole thing. Make it a habit. Make it an easy one. They got a minty essence in every bottle, helps keep things fresh, helps make taking your multis every day actually enjoyable. And they've got it for, different stages of life. I'm at the far end of the spectrum, the above 50. What are you going to do? Essential for Men is a quality multivitamin from a company you can actually trust. And get this, Ritual is offering my listeners 30% off during your first month. Visit ritual.com/majority. Start Ritual or add Essential for Men to your subscription today. That's 30% off ritual.com/majority. Also, one more sponsor for today's show. I use this product regularly. I mean, honestly, I got to figure out a way of carrying it around with me because there have been multiple occasions where I'm like, how did I not do this? And like the other night, I met my girlfriend. We went for a dinner thing. And
is this Z-Biotics?
Yes.
I could have used that last night.
There you go. You forget. She bought some. And I'm like, how did you not bring me? But I don't know. We got into a fight. Anyways, the point is, if the day after drinking is sometimes a problem for you, well, there's a solution. It's called Z-Biotics. Z-Biotics is a pre-alcohol probiotic. It's the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. And here's how it works. For a long time, I thought that the reason why I didn't feel good the next day was because of dehydration. That is not it. You may get dehydrated, but that is not it. It's a byproduct, a toxic byproduct that alcohol creates in your gut. And what Z-Biotics pre-alcohol probiotic does is it produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it the most. So all you got to do is just remember to drink Z-Biotics before drinking alcohol. That's actually the hardest part of this whole thing. That's the only hard part. Sometimes I forget.
Yeah.
You drink responsibly, get a good night's sleep, you'll feel great the next morning. You want to go to work and do a podcast, you can do it. Mm-hmm. You want to work out, you can do it. It makes a big difference. Go to zbiotics.com/majority. Get 15% off your first order when you use majority at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using our code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or the occasion. Z-Biotics is backed with a 100% money back guarantee. So if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they're going to refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, head to zbiotics.com/majority. Use the code majority at checkout, 15% off. Thanks for Z-Biotics for sponsoring this episode and for making it easier for me to actually do my job on many occasions in the past. Just remember, we'll put the podcast, links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Be right back. When we come back, we'll be talking to Malaika Jabali, senior news and politics editor at Essence Magazine, author of It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. We are back, Sam Seder on the Majority Report with Emma Vigeland. Real pleasure to finally welcome to the program Malaika Jabali, senior news and politics editor at Essence Magazine, author of It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. Malaika, welcome to the show. Long overdue.
I know. Hi, Sam and Emma. I'm surprised it's been this long.
It's been too long. You were too busy doing your book for a long time.
Yeah, that did take up. That's a valid reason.
It is a valid reason.
But now we get to talk about it.
Great.
So.
To
I
know. So congrats on the book. Let's just start. Like, who is your audience for this book?
I say that it's people who are socialish and not quite committed to being socialist. So folks who are like, I know that there are some fundamental problems with capitalism. I know I'm not getting paid as much as I need to be. I feel like I've done everything right. and I still can't get ahead. I still feel unhappy in some way. And they can recognize that there's racism. They can recognize that there's class issues. They know that corporate bosses can be an issue, but they don't quite have the language to identify what that is. So I'm pulling people who are kind of on the edge and saying, okay, here's an alternative. And, I think a lot of those people are younger people. It's Gen X, it's Gen Z, it's millennials. So it is definitely geared towards my peers and a little bit younger.
The book reminds me of two different, or broadly speaking, there was that book that He's Just Not That Into You,
right?
Where it was sort of like a way of like convincing you that like you need to move on. But also Nomadland. We interviewed the author of that book, which talked about, which is basically ethnography about people's experience in the wake of the financial crisis, and the idea that so many people had that my situation, loss of a home, whatever is a function of something that I did, as opposed to something more systematic. Talk about a little bit about like that sort of like that aspect of, before we get to the sort of he's just not that into you type of thing. but talk about that aspect of like how our system is designed to obscure the structural issues that leave people where they are.
It's through a lot of propaganda, so the structures are created. And then when people rise up to say something about it, there is a whole legal apparatus. There's a policy apparatus. There's a police state that then says, oh, you actually can't talk about it this way. We'll malign you if you think about it in these terms. And so it's really interesting that you mention the Great Recession, because I would say that is when it crystallized for me that I was analyzing things through a Marxist take on what was happening, and I identified with it. So I officially became socialist during the Great Recession. I had thought about the ills of capitalism, but it was very historical. It was very abstract. I was looking at the ways that exploiting Black labor, exploiting indentured servants, exploiting wage laborers in the North, the colonization of the Native Americans all made me realize that capitalism was fundamentally built on exploitation and unfairness and immorality in many ways. But I didn't quite identify as anything else. I just knew that this was a problem. But having that personal experience and saying, okay, my family, for instance, was targeted with a subprime loan. There weren't any reasons why we should have gotten it other than the fact that you had a whole bunch of lenders who said, this is an easy target. These are easy targets. And because I had already had a lens of looking at systematic issues just through my studies and environment and upbringing, I was like, I know it's not just me. And then you study more and you realize this is happening to a whole zip code, whole communities, neighborhoods, the country. And so through that, it was like, okay, we need to let other people know that it is not just their responsibility for making it in a society that was not intended for the average person to succeed.
Yeah, I mean, to return to what Sam was saying about almost the construction of your book as being directed towards people and their feelings. It's time to break up. It's okay to feel okay about breaking up with capitalism. Like, there's so much shame that is internalized, I think, on a day-to-day basis, whether it's if you're struggling with student loan debt, if you were targeted by a predatory loan, if, you're not able to make your car payments and things like that. And I really appreciate how you focus on trying to debunk those myths, because it can really, I think, liberate people from that shame and then get them to start thinking less about, oh, I am in some way not living up to this impossible standard. And then you can liberate people and they can start thinking about these structures more broadly.
Right. And I'm really glad that you guys have pointed that out, because I've recognized, I think, in talking about the book, that it is very personalized. Like, it's intended for individuals to kind of wake up and raise their consciousness, which is kind of at odds with a structural analysis, right? Like, we're talking about these larger problems, but I feel like a lot of texts we'll break down the problems, but how can we allow people to relate to that information? Like, we can break down capitalism all day. We can break down the wealth gaps all day. We can break down the disparity in income inequality and wealth inequality and how much corporate bosses have been making off the backs of workers. But I think people needed to feel that. And we do have, and I think this is also about empowerment. Like, we do have a say in how this goes, and we can elect those people who then make those kinds of structural and policy changes.
Let's talk about sort of some of the sort of the direct impact, the sort of, I guess, the examples that you use that resonate with folks similarly situated, right? I mean, there are some, like you say, you can talk about sort of more abstract things. You really focus on student debt because I think one of the statistics that you drop, the student debt in the U.S. is higher than the total wealth held by the entire bottom 50% of the U.S. And I mean, that is it's just an astonishing figure. That and how much it has. I mean, what's your sense in terms of like what happened over the past couple of years in terms of like there was an influx of support for Americans for like over the course of a brief window over the course of part of COVID, and then it was just sort of like summarily goes away. The moratorium on student debt repayments, support for people with children just goes away with a whimper, as it were. What's your sense of how people react to that?
How people are reacting to
the
tapering of that. I think we lose direction. It's easy for us to get lost and mired in our own problems. And I think that takes a lot of activism. That kind of pressure on an administration takes work, and there are groups doing that work. So I interviewed somebody named Astra Taylor, who's a part of the Debt Collective, a founder of the Debt Collective. And so she's been activating around this and also negotiating with the Biden administration. And I think it speaks to another aspect of the book, which is why I try to steer clear of partisanship, because both parties are liable in this big mess that capitalism has created. And they've both been involved in not mitigating the impacts on everyday people. And so what happens with politics is, I think with anything else, your party wins and there's less incentive to actually put pressure on the government. So even though people said, oh, we're going to push Biden left and we're going to do all these things, that's really hard for some people to do, because then there's more strategizing involved. Well, we want to negotiate with him behind the scenes, and we want to, people are trying to get the little wins and the things for, maybe their institutions or their organizations. And so it just gets atomized. And so I think beyond student loan debt, because that is a federal issue, there has to be a move towards local and grassroots politics. And then also Republicans distracted from, a lot of that work by having us talk about phantom issues, critical race theory, for instance, which is a niche topic in law schools, or trans issues, or what's happening in schools. So we get distracted, I think, in part because of, right-wing agenda. And then we just put less pressure on our team when they're in office.
Let's talk about that sort of like that moment that I think, your book is trying to achieve, where, you realize that capitalism is just not that into you type of situation. Like how does one, is it, and I think at one point you in the book, you say that this is not necessarily about a lack of imagination, but isn't it? I mean, just talk about that for a moment. Like the idea of envisioning, and certainly in my generation, the era I grew up in, conceiving of a socialist society was just sort of, there was no discussion of it. There was no visions of it. I'm technically Gen X, but at the tail end, or the front end, I guess. But the point being that there just wasn't a lot. It really did feel like a lack of imagination. Is that still the case, do you think, or no?
I think it's mostly political will. I think, especially because the book isn't saying, okay, this whole government is going to be socialist overnight. And if you look at the readings of socialist activists and philosophers and government officials, they were still trying to figure out what that looks like. So I think it would take a lot of imagining and conversation and practice to figure out what that could look like, especially in a world where we know socialists are maligned and killed, and there have been coups against socialist governments. So putting that aside, that yes, there will take some imagination, I think, to get into the specifics, there are a lot of basic things that socialists have lobbied for that have been around for about a century. Universal healthcare, single payer healthcare is not a new topic. This is something that came up in the early 1900s under the Truman administration. And even then, you had business interests who lobbied together to say, this is going to affect our bottom line. You had the insurance companies who realized that this could be something that should go into the private sector instead of being a public sector issue. So things like that, thinking about free college tuition, that's not new. We had it in so many states, but then state governments, like with healthcare, they realized that, we're starting to integrate. So we need to figure out a way to privatize so that we are not, so that we can keep these goods, we can keep this common good for certain amounts of people. And those people tended to be white. So people didn't want to share with Black people. And so that's how we ended up retracting from a lot of these public services. And something that I argue in the book is that having the government do things is not socialist in and of itself. It's maybe arguably not socialist at all, because you see it in capitalist countries. But socialists have been the ones at the forefront of those movements, and we can at least get back to having some basic necessities.
I think it's also just about removing points of leverage from capitalists and from people in the private sector. Like when you mentioned their education, the privatization of that, the privatization of our healthcare, those are all things that, when they're decommodified, people are able to kind of live their lives more in the way that they want to, as opposed to if you lose your job, your healthcare is gone. Or, if you don't like your job, well, you have to pay back your student loans because you're so deeply in debt. You're going to stay in this position. And I think that's what makes it so difficult to disentangle. Because the powerful really want to keep those leverage points.
You're absolutely right, Emma. And even this idea of having, an American dream through home ownership, that means you have to stay sedentary. Can people really go on strike if they have to pay a mortgage? People may not mind being evicted in a place where, they might have a 6-month or 1-year lease, but you have a mortgage. You're tied to these people until it's paid off or you sell it. So how committed are we going to be even to movement work if we're so bogged down with these paying for things that are necessary for our survival? So that's absolutely, correct. And this is why we have big corporations who fight so hard against it, even though it is not like an orthodox socialism. It's taking so many of our goods out of the private sector, out of the financialization sector. So they're having a fit. And so I think, it's something that it's important to recognize.
I think that's the same dynamic too with healthcare. Even on a bottom financial level, removing that obligation from employers would be helpful in terms of like just the sheer sort of financial transaction involved, but it would also cede a lot of control over workers that they don't want to necessarily cede. Let's talk about the relationship between capitalism and race. You talk about the Black radical tradition in the book. How does that interplay work?
I think it's crucial. I think it's so important that I had it in this second chapter, and it's something that we debated. My editor and I, we went back and forth with, just to give people a little background. The first chapter is on capitalism, just the basics of what it looks like, who are capitalists. The second chapter is on race and class through clever references and memes and things like that. And then the third chapter is also kind of an introductory chapter, just looking at what does it mean to be socialist? What has socialism looked like? What are socialist projects kind of around the world? What have they looked like? And so for me, integrating a specific race and class chapter was crucial, on top of weaving it in throughout the book for a couple of reasons. One of them being, I'm thinking of part of the audience here are my girlfriends. It's the Black women like me who feel like we've made it, but people are struggling to say that they are looking at an alternative system, because to them, capitalism means prosperity. Capitalism means, I've sacrificed all this, so why are you trying to take it away from me now, when we've been held back from really prospering, like as Black women, as Black people in this society? We should support Black-owned businesses. So this was a way to talk to my homegirls and say, okay, this is actually what capitalism means, and it doesn't mean that you can't live well. Socialism is about more people living well. It's about the masses living well. While capitalism does the opposite. It focuses a lot of the wealth and prosperity in the hands of a small few, a relatively small few. And if you look at the origins of capitalism, we would not have had it without, again, the enslavement of Black labor, the pillaging of the indigenous. The reasons why so many of the programs that we don't have right now have not prospered or lasted that long is because elected officials used race as a wedge. It was actually astonishing to me how much of the healthcare fight and the anti-healthcare fight throughout the entire 20th century was fear-mongering that communism on one hand and integration on the other would be combined with healthcare. And so if you actually give healthcare to everybody, including Black people, you would destroy the lives of white people, because at the time, eugenics was still a big issue. And so the rhetoric around it, the propaganda, the flyers, the brochures from the American Medical Association, the speeches that one of the chapter leaders was telling amongst his, fellow peers was that, this thing could keep Black people healthy, and we don't want to do that because that would threaten the white race. I learned so much more about the linkages between healthcare and some of these other issues, or even student loan debt. Again, as I mentioned, without that threat of integration, we probably, or people being upset about the threat of integration, we probably would still have cheap tuition today. So it's so integral in how capitalism has been able to survive.
And I should also say, in the context of student debt, Black women in particular have a really disproportionate share of that student debt, particularly from for-profit universities, that where people feel like they've bumped up against some type of glass ceiling without a degree, go and expend all this money to presumably further their career, and it really just ends up being just debt. We've talked a lot about that in the past. So, all right. So you're at that point where, there's an awareness that this is a structural problem. This isn't just me. What do people do? Tangibly speaking, is there value in electing the closest, to the sort of or the person who espouses more than the other person of these sort of socialistic policies? How do we proceed in a sort of a tangible way?
I think that can be a slippery slope. So I steer clear of electioneering in the book. I think that there is power in mass movement and mass organization, where you're enabling people to find a community who can then put demands and strategize together about what they want to do moving forward. I think, of course, all of this is impacted by policy. Policy creates a lot of these problems, but directly trying to figure out who's, the lesser of two evils, this is where it's brought us. So I focus on people joining something. If you've got a union, join that. If you need to have one, unionize. There are, for instance, with the Debt Collective, as I mentioned, it's a debtors union. So they do advocacy work, and they're also working to give people, tangible results so that they can combat the student loan debt that they personally have. So that's considered, they consider that a debtors union. Join an organization. I think capitalism does a really great job, again, of isolating us and making us think these are all of our individual problems and our individual failings. But when you are in concert with other people, it eases some of that burden, and it also empowers you to fight. So joining, you got to join something. I think that's a very easy step. And there are so many groups right now that are getting involved in a lot of different kinds of work that you can find, if there's anything you care about, the climate, if you care about student loans, if you care about, having healthcare, a lot of them lean left. And so there are so many ways that you can move forward through an organization.
And then what follows that? I mean, it just we cede that to the organizations in terms of like rallying for certain issues. Are they? Is it on an issue by issue basis, or are we looking for more sort of like broader, I guess, all in type of reform or change?
I think all of the above. So if we just look at, as one example, the Black Panther Party, they weren't just a community-based organization. They also had a political and philosophical project that they were working on, right? And they also made sure to have services for the community, because you can't just go around with all this theory and then people are like, okay, well, how are you actually going to help me in my day-to-day life? And you have nothing to offer them. So I think those kinds of organizations are important, where you're able to think about the ideological underpinnings. I think that's so crucial, but you're also doing some work. So the Black Panther Party decided at one point that they were going to be involved in politics. So I don't think it necessarily means rallying around a particular candidate, though it could be if that, this is all democratic. Socialism is about democracy. So if that's what people decide, then that's what they decide. But I think just looking at the patterns of how some of these groups have worked, elect your own candidates. Figure out how those political processes work. Decide, okay, do you want to be on the Democratic ballot? Do you want to be independent? See what works in that particular group that you're in. I have been involved in an organization called Operation Power. We do all the, hoity-toity, book readings and political education, but we also elect officials who are socialist or radical or progressive in some way. And so we have to understand, what does gathering petitions look like? Going to the train stations, getting people to get your candidate on the ballot, and then saying, okay, well, which party should they be on? What do people respond to in this community? And we could get, as nitty gritty as you want to. We could get nitty gritty, you know what I mean? It is about coming up with a platform and then saying, okay, who exactly are we going to be choosing for this? Or are we going to abstain from this particular election? So you can elect candidates, and you can also figure out a strategy for people who align with your agenda and endorsing certain candidates. But I do think that political piece is important, like getting involved in politics in some way, even though I'm not, promoting, endorsing any particular party.
I remember a piece that you wrote that really stuck with me. Obviously, and I think it was back in like 2017 about in Milwaukee. I think it was looking at Black voters who had stayed home in the 2016 election. I can't remember where it.
That current affairs.
Was it in current affairs? Okay.
Oh, nice.
And I wonder, like, give me your sense of how you reach folks like that and convince them that engaging has any value, because there is a sense that, like, sort of, and I think it's not specific, to Black communities in Milwaukee. I mean, I think this is the case. I remember years ago, during the Bush years, seeing a documentary where, somebody was talking about how, like, the Walmart is destroying all the things. And somebody said, well, why don't you get involved with this? It's like, what does politics got to do with this? I mean, and this was in a rural area, with some, rural white folk. I mean, how do you convince people who feel like there is no point to engaging in any of this, regardless of whether it's electoral politics or, for that matter, like organizing around a union, for that matter? And I think certainly the union stuff is, like, picked up steam because you can't avoid sort of seeing how empowered it is. But what is the what's the mechanism to get people to see that their actions can have some impact?
That's a great question. And I think part of it is not putting that responsibility on people to feel like everything that they get involved in has to have an impact. But I think they need to see somebody aligning with them making an impact. So if, again, we go back to the Black Panther Party, that didn't start off with some real deep ideological, analysis of the lumpen proletariat. There were community folks who said, we need a stop sign because too many kids are getting run over on this block. And they put a homemade stop sign up there, and eventually the city came around. And so once people observe that the folks who are involved are making a difference, I think you inspire people to get involved. There are some people who may not ever care. There are some people who are too tired. We're working 3, 4 jobs. People have side hustles. They're told they need to be working all these jobs in order to make a living. And so I don't think the onus should be on every single person to have to pick up, the mantle and do something. But I do think you can win people over to at least say, hey, let me check out a meeting because I know this group is doing something and I'm seeing the results of that. And that doesn't necessarily have to be, like you said, it doesn't have to be an electoral win. It could just be something for the community. We've been trying to get speed bumps in this neighborhood for so long. Who's doing something about it? And people will complain. And then you'll have the few at the vanguard who are like, okay, we actually want to do something about it. It's like, okay, let me rock with you, So you'll win people over even if everyone's not going to be deeply involved in the movement. That's just not how movements have worked. But you'll at least get people to align and support. And they might go to, the polls if they see one of your candidates is doing something.
I noticed too how, just to take it out of the U.S. context for a bit, that you do try to make your case to take it to a global scale, right? I mean, you center or you open your second chapter talking about Evo Morales, or has a quote from him in there, if I'm not mistaken. Why was that so important for you to make that case and not keep it confined to domestic politics in the U.S.?
Well, I started off wanting to do more internationally, but I also know, I hate to say it like this, but a lot of us only care about what's happening within our borders. We can be a little bit ignorant and we don't really see the connections abroad. But I think there are good examples outside of the U.S. context, and not just for looking at capitalism's failures, but looking at worker movements, looking at how people have had fundamentally different values than Western ones. Like the U.S. is based on individualism. That's a Western and European ideal. But there are some communities who have thought about communal values for eons. In Bolivia, part of their constitution is based on this idea of collectivism. In a lot of West African countries really all over, they believe in collectivism. And so I think it allows us to step outside of this trope that it's human nature to be selfish. It's human nature to only want to look out for yourself. Of course, capitalism works because it's a reflection of how we all are. Capitalism works because it has, in large part, killed off opposition. It works because it has propagandized us out of alternatives. It has focused so much on the fact that this is an innate idea that's natural and works, instead of something that is built on exploitation and clear policy, distinct policy that has kept us thinking this way. And so when you look outside of this Western bubble, you realize that everybody isn't doing this way, and they haven't always done it this way.
Malaika Jabali, senior news and politics editor at Essence Magazine. The book is It's Not You, It's Capitalism, Why It's Time to Break Up and How to Move On. Thanks so much for coming on. We'll put a link to the book at majority.fm. Hope to have you back very soon. Appreciate it.
Thank you. So good to be here.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks. I'm going to head into the fun half of the program.
What's cool about the book too is it's like lots of graphics, stuff that you can probably. It's a really good introductory kind of capitalist critique. Not saying it's rudimentary in any way, but just the fact that it's so visual, I think, is really
Accessible.
helpful.
Yeah, it's a good like coffee table book
Yes.
that people might be able to you can just sort of page it open and there's little like sections. The design is really great.
Folks, just a reminder, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only support the show and help us survive and thrive, but you get the free show free of commercials. You get the fun half. You get to IM us during the fun half. All sorts of benefits. So check that out. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop. Fair trade coffee, including the Majority Report blend. Wow. Yes. It's a delicious blend, medium roast of coffee. You can get others, but always start with the Majority Report blend and then work your way into other ones if you need be. Marble Gallery on the IM says, I have some extra money this month. I'd like to donate it to help the people in Gaza. I'm aware of Doctors Without Borders, but can you recommend anyone else? Thanks in advance. Also, congrats, Emma, on your engagement.
Oh, thank you.
We had that list that Hassan Piker was donating to at the beginning of the Israeli strikes, and maybe we can repost that on the blog and in the podcast and YouTube description. But the trouble is, right now, is that there's no money going to get into Gaza. When we were talking to Just Coffee and thinking about who we wanted to contribute to, I think the real time to really provide those funding is going to be in the coming months to Gaza. But certainly, Doctor Without Borders, they're doing great work there to the extent that they can at this point. It's just
we should do eventually, I think, maybe some sort of stream. Sun's out, guns out, kind of deal.
Exactly.
But as you say, like, it's just the bombardment right now. The number one thing that needs to happen is to stop the bombing. I mean, the thing I really Jewish Voice for Peace is a great organization that you can help fund their actions right now. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Is it the question is like, what's the most helpful right now? Is it attempting to get aid in there? Because I don't know that you're going to do that. One of the things I like about Doctors Without Borders is that not only are they actually like on the ground providing aid, but they're also there's been a lot of very strong testimony from them once about their colleagues there, and that I think help in terms of world opinion.
I mean, that's an organization. I went back into the bombing in Afghanistan of a Medicine Sans Frontiers hospital, and like they're empowering that organization, I think, is a good thing.
Yeah.
The type of things that they put up with.
That's been
Doctors Without Borders, and they just had this really strong statement about what's happening there too. I mean, they're heroes. You played that when I was out, right? That interview with the nurse. It's deeply depressing to me that it seems like you can only get these voices out there when they're white or Western, but like, I mean, at least people are starting to figure it out.
Do what happens. Like, I mean, Avi Shlaim mentioned this in one of his books, where it's like it's sad that like the sort of seal had to be broken with regards to like the Nakba by Israeli historians, saying like, actually this is true, but it did ultimately have a positive effect where you're able to see more Palestinian voices following that. Because it was basically co-signed by Israeli historians, and I think all of this speaking out, and I'm glad the extent that we've had Palestinians on this program and on Left Reckoning, and I think everybody's voice is, I think, needed at this moment.
Emma, what's happening on ESPN?
Well, we'll be recapping another exciting NFL week. Again, we'll be announcing the punishment for either myself or Bradley when we which one of us loses the competition that we're doing right now. But yeah, I mean, Giants tanking, Lions are legit, CJ Stroud, more victory laps on there, and the 49ers are back, and the Vikings Cinderella story just keeps on rolling. YouTube.com/ESPN show at 4 p.m. Yes, it's very fun. You should. It's a good time to get back into Minnesota.
I don't know if it's ever. I think that means I'm too late.
Well, so I mean, they're Kirk Cousins tore his Achilles, and they traded for this guy Josh Dobbs, and he's just like this complete Cinderella story quarterback. Yeah, okay. It's really sweet. Anyway, Left Reckoning.
Left Reckoning. Dave Griscom and I finished our reading of the Communist Manifesto. We did part 3 and chapters 3 and 4 of that. Check that out. And yeah, we played a clip. Actually, we'll play it in the fun half, but I have a new favorite song. It's a little bit late for the song of the summer, but it's a song to bosses. But yeah, patreon.com/Left Reckoning to get access to that.
I saw you there. I saw you.
What is
Post
it?
part of that.
You have to check out in the fun half, folks.
In the we're going to play it in this half?
Is it Richmond, north of Richmond 2.0?
No.
It's my version of Richmond, north of Richmond.
Okay,
yeah.
Good.
I saw that.
So hopefully
That's a
the
funny
next
song.
Democratic debate, they open
Who
20
was
minutes
that?
on this.
Mark Ribole, I think is how you pronounce his name. Some people call him Loop Daddy on TikTok.
Can you believe that the frickin' I know that you're talking about something else, but like I'll never get over sitting there when we watched that first debate and seeing that they opened the first 20 minutes of the Republican debate centered around the song Rich Men North of Richmond.
Yeah.
Our
well,
society is rotted to its core.
we've got
take
some
hold.
problems.
Yeah.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920 is the number. We have not turned on the phones yet, but we will see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males
Psych. Fuck them.
Snowflake says what? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. All lives matter.
Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
and the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African, and the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100. Can't knock the hustle. Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha alpha males are black. Black Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Fun Half Majority Report.
You want to play this song?
Let's play it.
Do you want to play this song?
Yeah, we can wait.
All right, let's play. You want to play it? You want to start off this way?
Yeah, so I saw this, somebody quoted this video and calling it the sound of 4% unemployment, which I thought was a funny thing to say about it. But this is a comedian, sort of musician named Mark Riboulet, and he's at...
Where? I've heard this guy's name before.
I think he's like... I think
he does a lot of stuff online with this type of, like, he loops stuff together, and he makes music with his voice and loops it, and he's very creative.
He got big over COVID, I think people were saying.
He's also in, like, Washington Square Park, like, all the time doing stuff like this.
Yeah, this is on the, I believe, the Lower East Side at a music festival. But yeah, this is a song about being late.
You're late to work. Who gives a fuck? It's your life, bitch. Fuck you, boss. I'm late. What you gonna be doing about it? I said I'm late. You gonna fire me? There's no one else here, bitch. I'm late. That's cute. Late.
There we go.
Whoa.
It's the Matlack anthem. ladies and gentlemen.
That's what I walk to work in the morning listening to. You can learn a lot from that, though. That's I think Jerome Powell probably hears that when he goes to sleep at night.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. That's pretty funny.
It's actually,
I'm just looking at pictures. Like, I know I saw him when he's in his office, and I can't remember what song it was, but that's great.
it honestly is like now in my head, and I know it's going to be for the rest of the day.
Exactly. Literally, I like watched it on Saturday. It's been in my head for like 48 hours.
Well, now you spread the virus to others. It's a good one.
Let's go to the IMs. Nola Birdwatcher. Greeting, friends. I hope you're having a very merry end of strike. I, along with my partner, are Yahtzee members in New Orleans. It's a wonderful day to finally see the light at the end of this very long tunnel. We'd like to thank y'all for your coverage and being on the short list of people even mentioning the crew members that have also been without work. However, I'm messaging to ask for advice on what I should say when calling representatives regarding a ceasefire. As you know, Louisiana is blood red. So I'd like to make as much of an impact as possible. Thank you for the amazing work. Congrats to Emma. And as always, left is best.
Thank you.
I mean, I think you say, I want my representative to call for a ceasefire. And really, if you want to make as much impact as possible, you get other people to do it.
Yeah, I'm looking ceasefire now. What is it? Ceasefirenow.com by Jordan Ull. Has a toolkit and stuff like that. I think there might even be a script there.
Oh, nice.
So yeah, I would go to ceasefire now.
Or ceasefiretoday.com.
Ceasefiretoday.com. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
And always, mix up the script a little bit because they grade their comments. They weigh their comments based upon how much they think they're unique. Dave from Jamaica. Emma, congrats on the engagement.
Thank you.
Fancy communist, please read. I'm Muslim who's native Arabic speaker, and here are two stories to give an example of what Palestinian people are living right now. Father get to a hospital and pull 2 feet with a part of the leg still attached, wrapped in a blanket, and say, "That's all I found, thanks to Allah." Place his child's feet next to the bodies on the ground and just leave. The next story of a mother snatched her dead baby's body from the medic and set it on the ground and give him to me, let me breastfeed him. My love must be hungry. Horrible. Yes. I mean, just absolutely horrible. Penny in New Mexico. Can't say enough about the group Combatants for Peace, former IDF soldiers and Palestinian fighters who are now committed to nonviolence. Regular Shoe Mike, congrats, Emma. I
Thank
also
you.
recommend the Adam Conover interview with Nathan Thrall about his book and the conflict in Palestine.
I also listened to, speaking of people, who were combatants and then de-radicalized. Over the weekend, Democracy Now! Had an interview with a Brown professor of genocide and the Holocaust, who's now speaking out and saying these are crimes of genocide. And he, in part, came to that conclusion based on being in the IDF in the 70s and seeing some of that stuff firsthand. So I'd recommend that as well.
Barb, MR fans, support organizations that are trying to shift political approach to Gaza right now. Penny, New Mexico. I work with an organization, Tomorrow's Women, that has the ability to directly give to the young women we work with in Gaza and their families. Tomorrow's Women. Baxwood Marxist. Emma, I could have sworn you were already engaged, but congrats.
Thank you.
Gotta be Nick. Hey, Sam, would you consider going on to H3 to speak to Ethan? As you know, you're Jewish. I do know that. It may be a good way to discuss. I mean, I would be happy to go on, really just about anywhere. But yes. June, Daddy Cedar, you single? I am not single at this time. Marble Gallery, I have some extra money this month. And I'd like to donate it with the people in Gaza. Okay,
we read that, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is really disturbing, particularly at Brandeis University, considering its namesake. Here are, the clip starts at a point where the cops have already jumped these protesters. But as far as I can tell, there was no accusation of any violence prior to the cops being violent here. I will talk about the Brandeis in whom this university is named after in a moment, but play this. It's really disturbing.
Back up! Back up! Let's go! Back up! Hey, back up! 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 Please! Shame on you! Please, Yaffa, stay with us. Shame on you! Shame on you! Okay, but stay with us. Shame on you! 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 They didn't do anything. Is that what my dad's running pays for? Is that what my dad's running pays for? Shame on you! Shame on you! Fucking shame on you!
I actually saw a different clip too, where they were really just sticking this guy's face into the ground, and he got up saying, talking about the racism involved in this. But the idea that a university named after Louis Brandeis, who was both a lawyer who argued in front of the Supreme Court, but also served on the Supreme Court, who weighed in on one of the fundamental cases, and the actual name of the case escapes me at the moment, about free speech, where the determination of whether speech constituted hate speech or problematic speech was whether it was, and apparently at Brandeis they said, you can't support. They're arguing that that this was support of Hamas, and it was then sort of like second order violence. The case that Brandeis wrote,
Whitney versus California.
Yes, it was Whitney, exactly, and was basically the question as to whether you were inciting violence in that moment, as opposed to promoting maybe violence that was happening somewhere else. And that was the distinction, I'm using broad strokes, that Brandeis ultimately articulated in that case. And there was really no sense that these people were inciting violence, in Waltham, Massachusetts.
They're like on the quad of the campus. It's like, it looks like it's in front of the library or something. I mean, this is exactly what universities are supposed to be laboratories for, is that kind of speech and expression, incentivizing those things.
And to be clear too, like the idea of the cops coming to do this. I mean, again, we've heard like the equation of this type of thing to like, you won't let conservatives speak on campus. It's a different thing.
Yeah.
This is not like a counter protest shouting people down. This is armed police officers coming and arresting and intimidating and violently throwing these people to the ground.
This is actual free speech violations. Brandeis doing that in his name too, as one of the more like lefty Supreme Court justices in our history, right, or more liberal ones, is quite concerning. But like, isn't it just the idea that protests can be cracked down on like that, when they're protesting what is called the only democracy in the Middle East, and the United States is also called a democracy here, as you have those, that kind of speech suppression. That irony should not be lost on people.
I mean, Colombia suppressing student justice for Palestine and Jewish Voices for Peace, as it has an Edward Said chair in their department, is just, I mean, it's appalling. And it'd be nice to get Obama, instead of just platitudes about how people should come together and have a conversation, to speak out about what his alma mater's doing.
Well, let's be clear. This is all about donors, withholding funds, and
what's the endowment for then?
You would think that there would be a number where they go, you know what, we've now insulated ourselves. I mean, that's the thing that is so much of what is corrupt about these universities is that, for each individual who's working there, the way that they are measured and the way that they get paid is by increasing that endowment. There is no concept of like, hey, we've got $1 billion endowment. I guess now what we can do is that insulates us from impinging upon our academic freedom. That insulates us from having to worry about, not being generous with financial aid, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, the university system in this country, in a large part, Malaika touched on this. When we started cutting back on state universities, really in the 80s, it allowed and created essentially upward pressure on private universities to keep raising their tuition. And we've been off to the races ever since. Then completely lost sight of like what the value of an education is. And it became more about like the physical plant. And I mean, I just did college tours, and it was sort of shocking to me that, how much of what the sales pitch was about the physical plant and the sort of like amenities. Relative to when I went to school. And it was much cheaper.
Right.
Not, things were much cheaper, around that time, but the delta is nuts. I mean, it really is nuts.
I mean, I still remember my college visits, and the athletic facilities was like the main, here's this, it's like a a glamorous gym, and it was cool. I'm glad that my university built one, but also you see how that sort of competition is driving up tuition.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
I mean, in Mississippi, Reeves literally took money that was supposed to go for poor people to build a volleyball facility for Brett Favre, if that says anything.
It's a real mess.
Yeah.
Should we do number 4?
Yes. I like this clip a lot.
All right, set this one up.
So Greta Thunberg was at a rally in Amsterdam, speaking at a climate rally, and the issue of Palestine came up. And Greta has, over the past few weeks, been outspoken, standing with Gaza, said that she supports, the Palestinians in the plight that they're experiencing right now in the mass death. And this guy, I guess he's an older man, comes up on stage and is not happy with the way that the conversation or the way that her speech has shifted.
We have not been listening. The people in power have not been listening.
I come here for a climate demonstration, not a political view. Listen, climate demonstration.
Calm down. Calm down. Calm down. Oh, climate justice on occupied land. Oh, climate justice on occupied land.
I just think it's really interesting how that man expected to come to what is a political rally.
It's
Climate
symbolic,
justice is political, and didn't want to hear anything about Palestine.
It's so symbolic of like previous generations and apolitical. I don't know what think they're doing, but they're not really it's like those people we saw being protested in, was it Martha's Vineyard or whatever, and they're like, you don't know how to get things done. No, bro, you had this entire chance.
Well, there's a segment of I think liberals that think of climate justice as kind of outside of the traditional modes of politics, or that those
it's a technocratic project.
Exactly. Or it's it's a technological thing as opposed to interconnected to systems of oppression. And Greta has been really consistent on this issue. She has protested in Norway and Sweden the development of wind turbines on indigenous land, and has done sit-ins and other activism on this front. So I just look, I mean, this isn't just to praise her, but she really could have gone down this kind of greenwashed corporate climate route now when she got that international recognition, and just been basically symbolic for the kind of politics that guy wants. And she's refused to do that and has taken a lot of risks on that front. Her moral fortitude at the age of 20, I look up to her, and I think we all should.
I mean, and I'll also say, just even from aside from sort of the 30,000 foot view, it is people like Palestinians who lose in the context of climate change.
Yep.
Both in terms of the impact, but also the idea that what's going on in Gaza and the position of the United States that is funding it, and I would also argue probably one of the driving reasons about the idea to sort of disempower Gaza and leave it without any type of sort of political representation is all about fossil fuels.
Yeah.
This is not, this is not taking place in a non-resource rich environment.
Yep.
There are huge oil fields off of the Gaza coastline that are worth hundreds of billions of dollars. And there is no way that stuff is not implicated in this. The support for Israel, the idea that it's not implicated because this is an oil-rich region, is just absurd. Both in terms of the implications of this type of activism and how it sort of runs across different political issues, and there's a direct relationship between
colonialism, systems of oppression, and climate change.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry if that triggered you and hurt your feelings so much that you as a grown man had to storm the stage and seize the microphone from a young woman who has autism and probably has some sensitivity to some of those like startling moments like that. What a classy guy, really. But the fact that he's so triggered by that just goes to show, like, yeah, I'm sorry that the politics of this and the reality is a little bit messier than you'd like. But the reality is that she's correct. The people in global South, indigenous populations, they're the ones that bear the brunt of climate change, and you can't talk about climate change without intersecting those ideas.
Jackie C., the supposed son of creator of Hamas, is all over YouTube, says raised in it, now against its evil, says war only way. Have you seen it? Want your input. I think I may have seen it, and I don't really care. You know what his, I don't.
Yeah.
War being the only way. I just don't. I don't know what.
I don't know. Like, yeah, the war has been chosen, I think, and it's not surprising to me that certain groups would, with maybe like less of a optimistic attitude towards the possibilities to diplomacy, would grow up and then be supported by fractions of the population. It's, you know,
I don't imagine if Bibi Netanyahu's son came out and said we absolutely should not do this, that there people would be like, well, okay.
People should look up, speaking of Bibi Netanyahu's son, or is it his brother, the one who's basically the neo-Nazi? His son. His son is like an alt.
Yair
Netanyahu. Like an edgelord right winger.
Guy.
Yep.
Jackie C. Arab Bedouins in Israel have lost lives, also in need, lack of basics ignored by the media. Train boy, Mazel Tov, Emma, 6 foot bear. Did I say Nabka at the beginning?
You did.
Nakba, sorry. Just another classic, another, as you say, another example of prime pronunciation proving perfect picked profession.
It sounds like you just are hungry for a babka.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fritzy, congrats, Emma. Bobby Dog, wow, congrats, Emma. Congrats, Emma.
Thank you.
Dimension sympathizer, congratulations, Emma.
Thank you.
Bill from Cali, holy crap, congrats, Emma.
Thank
the
you.
patriarchy.
Thank you.
We have achieved another victory. Sam,
Yes.
please explain to Emma how she can now get a checking account.
Thank you. Yes. I also, I don't really like making decisions anymore all of a sudden. So.
There you are. We will check with your better half in the future when we throw to you for promos.
Can we retire this? Nothing has changed.
Amish Kami, Mazel Tov, Emma.
Yes, thank you.
WTF Cody, congratulations, Emma.
Thank
wishing you a lifetime of happiness and adventures. Literally everything in our life is affected by politics, and most things are interwoven. So annoying when people want to pretend climate justice is just about planting trees and recycling. That will not save us or the people that are struggling in occupied areas that have toxic water, land, and wildlife biodiversity basically non-existent.
Yeah.
So many domestic wild animals are dying too. Wildlife also being bombed. Animals can just die from the shock of fireworks. Imagine what bombs do. DNC Google pundit. Congrats, Emma. The whole they're using human shields excuse they used to kill civilians also begs the question, where in the hell are the Palestinian resistance supposed to keep their stuff? The place is 4 times more densely populated than Detroit. Does the Israeli government expect Hamas to try and find some big parking lots that are empty, pile up all their weapons and put a big sign on it saying, please bomb here only? No doughy effect. Congrats, Emma.
Thank you.
Matt, I guess. Congratulations, Emma.
Thank you.
From the window to the sea. Having been a parasocial relationship with Emma for years now, let me welcome the Mr. Vigeland to the family.
Thank you. Thank you.
Colin from Connecticut. Congrats, Emma.
Thanks. See, like I so it's so fun. Like I really didn't want a big deal about this, but apparently my mother and sister insisted, so we had a big family thing on Sunday. Like I literally explicitly told my fiance, just the two of us, don't make a big deal about it. But he was not allowed by my family, and I just get uncomfortable when it's attention on me about this. Like if I want to talk about Israel, like put the spotlight on me or whatever. But this, thank you for the congratulations, but I don't want to hear any more of it after today, basically.
Well, we're only about halfway through them, so.
Yeah. God.
JR in Philly, no one nails a segue like Sam Seder. Daredevil. Emma, I hope your life comes full circle and Julia Roberts can be your flower girl.
Oh, God.
I'm not sure I understand
I was
that.
the flower girl in that as the extra in that movie, Mona Lisa Smile.
You were?
Yeah.
I had no idea.
We talked about it.
I'm
at
not even
length.
sure I
Yeah.
knew about that movie.
All right.
Okie, public defender, congrats on the engagement, Emma. Wishing you and your partner a lifetime of happiness.
Thank you.
Angela from Alberta. Another round of protests occurred in Canada this past weekend. I attended a ceasefire protest along with 11,000 people in Edmonton, coordinated by the local Palestinian group along with Treaty 6 Indigenous activists. Meanwhile, Toronto attracted over 20,000 protesters, but saw a very large pro-Israel protest across town. Thomas from Texas, as a Giants fan and Daily MR listener, I'm devastated by the news that my celebrity crush, Emma Vigeland, is now engaged. I guess I'll get back on Tinder. JK, congrats.
That's a good
Emma.
idea. That's a good idea.
Sam's favorite, Sam is our favorite boomer. Congrats, Emma. Tim Pool must be seething right now. Your fiance must have a huge skate park and all the sushi.
Yep, that's why I chose him.
Thomas in Seattle. Congratulations on your first marriage, Emma.
Thank you. Thank you.
MSDN Cedar. I feel like your YouTube subscribers count has been growing at a faster pace than I've seen since I become a member back in 2018. Encouraging to see that you're all consistently killing it lately. Congratulations on your engagement, Emma.
More and more people are subbing.
Yeah, I mean, we had a big run back in like 16 and 17 or 15, somewhere around there.
Yeah,
And-
post-Trump was insane. It was like
and we
1,000
just-
people a day.
Wow.
Yeah,
really?
we're just getting back to somewhere around that. I mean, it ebbs and flows. I don't really understand it, nor do I really, to be honest with you, follow it terribly much. Smooth operator. Congrats, Emma. Your ring looks so beautiful. Happy for you.
Thank you. It's ethical, lab grown. That's what I wanted.
Lab grown? Mm-hmm. How does that happen?
So, like, I mean, it just I just know that they make them in labs. It's like less expensive, and then also you just know that like a child in Africa didn't like bleed
It's like a
to
cubic
create it.
zirconia.
No, they just like scientifically can make diamonds in labs now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Tom of Link, happy Fun Day Monday, folks. First things first, congratulations, Emma. Here in Britain, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak has reshuffled his cabinet. Among the headline moves are Suella Braverman being fired as Home Secretary and David Cameron being appointed Foreign Secretary. Cameron's also to be made a lord. Also, Sam, can I have a shofar for my grandfather who passed away unexpectedly on Friday? Of course. I'm sorry to hear that. Condolences. All right, let me turn on the phones. 646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number. That sound means the phones are on, ladies and gentlemen.
Whoa.
Let's go, ladies and gentlemen. This is number 5. It is with great sorrow that just when the American population was warming up to Tim Scott and Mindy, his girlfriend.
Mindy.
Isn't that her name?
It was the Mindy Project.
Mindy. Just as we were getting to know Tim and Mindy.
Right after the actors' strike wrapped up.
He has declared the following on the Trey Gowdy show.
He wants to spend more time with her.
And on Sunday night. Yes.
Yeah.
Tim Scott, who is battling not only his fellow competitors, but also battling the flu. Let me start by asking, how are you feeling? Dallas won this afternoon, so I guess you're feeling a little bit better, but how are you feeling, and when are you going to get back on the campaign trail?
Never.
Well, Trey, anytime Dak Prescott has 5 touchdowns, you feel better about everything. I've been drinking a lot of water. I'll be down for another couple of days, but I'm looking forward to getting back on the campaign trail. Without any question, Trey, one of the things I would recommend to every single American, I know it's not possible, by the way, if you ever want to love your country more, run for president. Traveling this country, meeting people has been one of the most fantastic experiences of my entire life. I love America more today than I did on May 22nd. But when I go back to Iowa, it will not be as a presidential candidate. I am suspending my campaign. I think the voters who are the most remarkable people on the planet have been really clear that they're telling me, not now, Tim. I don't think they're saying, Trey, no, but I do think they're saying not now. So I'm going to respect the voters, and I'm going to hold on and keep working really hard and look forward to another opportunity.
You are suspending your presidential campaign. You have plenty of money. You have the highest approval numbers of any candidate that is running, and you're a couple of states away from coming to a state where you are beloved, and you are suspending your presidential campaign.
Romans 8:28 is such an important scripture. It says that all things work together for good for those who love God and are called according to his purpose. I think the message is clear for me right now. I am indeed suspending the campaign, but I am going to remain as committed to making sure that this country chooses the right person by enjoying the journey of just helping people everywhere throughout South Carolina and through our country. We have an amazing country. I'm very thankful to be in America. We should all be proud of this country. I was a kid, Trey, as you know.
Oh my God, he's so
nearly failed out of
boring.
high school as a freshman. And here I am, was running for president just a few minutes ago.
Wow, man. Deep.
I'm trying to process this information.
Whoa, yeah,
and
this is
I'm
gonna
trying
be
to
rough
do
for
it,
Trey Gowdy.
on live
Also from
television.
South
So forgive
Carolina.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah, Trey.
You are the highest ranking African American.
All right, can you pause it? I'm sorry. This is so annoying. Like, Gowdy is just like playing so dumb right here. And I guess it's just because he has fealty to him, because Gowdy was a representative at the time from South Carolina.
He's trying to make it like it's a bigger story.
I'm just hearing it for the first time.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly,
I'm sure they're friends.
if you told me that this was the first episode of Trey Gowdy on Sundays, I would be like, oh, nobody even knew this show existed. That's why he's trying to make it like it's a big deal. Like, this is a hit. No, let me do this.
Whoa.
I mean, he's really trying to, make it a
little surprise.
Sunday Night in America with Trey Gowdy at 7 p.m.
How long has that been on?
I'll check. I watch a lot of Fox News, and I had no idea.
Wait, let me get this straight. You had absolutely zero chance of becoming president, really, ever.
Since June of 2021, Sam.
Okay, so that's...
I can't believe it.
That's amazing. I mean, he really is. He's in
Same hair, too.
a race to the bottom with Tulsi Gabbard, of like former members of Congress who have moved to Fox kind of contributor roles and are also incredibly uncharismatic.
At least
and
he's got a
uninteresting.
show.
Yeah, she doesn't have one yet.
Don't you get the sense, though, that
Or
like
does she?
every time like this guy's going on there, they're always like, Trey, I'll bet you $100 you won't get your hair cut like that again and go on TV.
Yeah, it's always something new with him.
The fade seems almost like tighter than even before. It's like
I don't
it's
know.
just perching up there. The he looks like a rooster.
All right, so folks, well, let's do some serious analysis as to what this means for the Republican race. It means nothing.
It means there's some donors that are free to go to Nikki Haley.
That's right.
Maybe.
That's right.
That's it.
Maybe.
That's it.
Maybe.
It means that I do think that Haley's trying to make a push right now to be the number 2.
Wait, what do you think about the timing of this? I mean, maybe he anticipated to get a big bump after the debate, or maybe Mindy was like,
And he was like,
dude,
Tim, I need you home.
How long am I supposed to do this?
Oh, Mindy's contract ran out. Yeah, right.
I'm per day. I'm a day player.
Or she basically just said, like, look, the strike is over now.
Yeah,
so
I got some real
need
work.
this gig.
Yep.
Politico, I think, reported, which I think, again, like this could just be total beat sweetening / ass covering, but they reported that, like, Scott's staff was blindsided by this announcement and that they had no idea he was going to be doing this last night, and that they were like, we thought we were going to be in this till the end, which I don't know if that reflects more on their cultish allegiance to Scott or if they're just stupid.
Well, I mean,
you could have
honestly, it could have been just like Mindy was like, incidentally, I'm not doing this anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I'm doing this one time.
You get one
And he's just like,
stage appearance.
This is gonna be too hard for me to.
But Dave Weigel, a friend of the show, tweeted this, which I think is true for all of them, but especially for Scott. With what Gowdy's saying, the approval ratings don't really matter because even if they like Tim Scott, even if 90% of Republicans like Tim Scott, the issue is more of those same Republicans that like Tim Scott like Donald Trump.
Well, yeah, those Republican voters are like, yeah, we like the black guy who says we're great.
Yeah,
we
right.
love him.
We don't, that doesn't mean we want him to be president. Like,
I mean,
oh yeah, we're not going to vote for him, but he's cool.
That's probably why he has the highest approval rating because they know he's not going to be
not threatening.
Exactly, yeah.
It's not a remote.
They know why he's there.
There's no chance whatsoever.
I mean, come on, Trey Gowdy. You've got to know that there's a difference between poll numbers versus like what people will actually do with those numbers. Like generally, people can be polled on something and say, I like this, but they're not going to go to the polling booth based on
I'm just
that.
trying to process what you're saying right now.
You're telling me. Wait a second.
Sam, your hair's too flat for.
I'm just trying to process what you're saying.
We got to
right
shave
now.
Sam's sides.
Yes, yeah.
Give him a faux pas.
Damn, he really has run the gambit of haircuts, Trey Gowdy. It's like it's like the Justin Bieber thing.
Calling from a 347 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, I'm calling from New York, and it's Okajik. I got to be quick.
Okajik. Good to
How
hear
are
from
you guys?
What's on
Yeah,
your mind?
thank you. All right, well, first, congrats, Emma. All the best. My wife and I have been together for over 23 years, and communication is the key. So
Thank you.
that's my advice for what it's worth. Yeah.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. Sam, I've been digging into the archives trying to find the poopy drop. I found shows back to 2007. I know I have some with Janine, but no luck yet. If I find it, I'll clip it and send it to you.
I know I must have it somewhere, but I got to get a new machine here because every time I try and go to the second screen.
Yeah, the iPad. I mean, how old's that iPad? 10 years old?
Yeah, I mean probably.
Yeah.
Okay.
That was their one. Yeah.
They don't work after 10 years?
Those were here when I got here.
I mean, it
definitely.
has one of those plugs where it's this thick.
They probably haven't been restarted since I got here.
Yeah.
This one actually runs on, what do you call it? On propane.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Okay, so, well, I've been back in touch with our friend again. I saw him out the trail. You know, his name's Vivek. It rhymes with cake. He used an easy bake oven for your birthday cake. He said he's feeling good about his last debate. How he came out swinging, at everybody, especially the women. But he told me that due to the adverse effects of his extreme ego, he's got this, he's been diagnosed now officially with a brand new condition where he's finding it harder and harder to rhyme different words. I think they're calling it identical rhyme poets disorder. But anyway, he gave me another quick rap for everybody, and I figure I better call in. It's irrelevant. So if it's okay, I'm going to just do it real quick.
All right,
okay?
do it real quick.
All right, real quick. I say my name's Vivek. This time it rhymes with snake. I'm going around the country selling oil from a snake. I'm back on your show to run up the score. Give myself high fives every time that I score. I'm young, I'm 38, I'm aggressive and fresh. The MAGA kids love me because my rhymes are so fresh. Dropping bombs, I'm fearless. I'm evil Knievel, gonna smoke the terrorists of the axis of Knievel. Nevertheless, in the polls, I continue to trail. Gotta jump, say it with me. I'll see you out the trail.
There you go. Oh, that is
Yeah.
fantastic.
Beautiful,
I love
beautiful.
that. Well done.
All right, thank you guys. Love the show. Left is best. Love you guys, and I'll see you around.
Who would have thought that there was so much room to explore with regards to poetry and form?
He really did. Vivek really did create like a new form of poetry. The same word rhyme.
I can't get enough of it.
Yeah.
Golden Oyster Cult. Congratulations to Emma. Love that he asked Sam for permission since Sam is clearly old enough to be Emma's dad.
Well, that was a joke. He did not call my co-host and boss before proposing to me. So
That you know of.
Yeah,
And then,
I guess I should ask him. Yeah.
But I am not. Well, I guess I technically probably am old enough. I mean,
You're
okay, boomer.
19,
I'm
okay.
29 years old. So yes. I mean,
God.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, in fact, my father was younger when he had me. Oh, that's okay. That's terrifying.
All
I
right,
hadn't
it's all right.
hadn't really done that math. Colin from 308 area code. I'm just trying to process here.
Hey.
I'm that old.
It is Aaron from Grand Island.
Huh?
Who's this?
Aaron from Grand Island.
Kowalski from Nebraska.
Yeah, outed. Well, first and foremost, congratulations, Emma.
Thank you.
It was some big news. I hear it's blowing up the Twitter spaces, and the IDF is now terrified. Not sure why. I think this should be a win for the patriarchy. Anywho.
Understood.
Just out of curiosity, how does the dowry system work in New York City? Like, I understand out here it's cattle, some crops, and then, you have to swear fealty to your spouse's father for, like, defensive pacts against the, tribal clans that come after you. So how does that work in New York?
Yeah, what he gets really in exchange are, hour-long rants about the Israeli occupation of Gaza and, screaming at the television about the giants. That's what he gets in terms of payment. I don't really have that much else to offer there. But, I think he should be happy with any of it.
Oh, well, I would imagine if you do that enough, that should lower rent prices.
It does. Yes. Neighbors love us.
Wonderful. Well, I was just going to give you guys a quick ag summary now that harvest is over. But wait, no, the neighbor had a combine send a piston into low Earth orbit, so now we got 250 more acres to do. But still, I can give you that update. All in all, harvest is looking great across the board. There's going to be plenty of production pretty much everywhere. The fertilizer prices are a little high, but manageable. The supply is there. It pretty much follows natural gas. But even then, oil prices seem to be stabilizing, and it hasn't hit the news as much due to, everything that's going on. But the U.S. might be just quietly normalizing relationships with Venezuela.
Yeah.
So that
we
could be a
headline that.
positive.
Right.
But just on the whole, this is
Food prices going to drop a little bit?
Absolutely not. None of this solves anything with monopolization of the food industry. Actually, so we might be seeing a slight increase in meat prices. Just with inputs being a little bit higher, a lot of the meatpacking plants are using that to justify raising prices, and no one can really figure out why, because they're not paying ranchers more, or the truck drivers, or the people on the factory floors. So, yeah, no, that won't happen. But there won't be shortages anywhere. The only other downside, of course, is high interest rates, which is kind of agitating a lot of the people in the farm market, because farmers utilize operating notes, and those are getting to be quite expensive for the 95% of farmers that use them. So that could be problematic going into the election. But I don't know. There's still a year where that could come down, so we'll just have to play it by ear. But other than that, the Southwest is looking the best it has in 10 years. So, yeah, things are looking up on that front.
Great.
That's good to hear.
All right. Well, thanks for the update, Kowalski, and good luck with that extra 250 acres you got in front of you.
I just want it to be over.
Soon it will be.
Soon, Kowalski. Oh, he just hung up. Did we find out whether there was some big crash in our studio? We're not quite sure it is. Calling from a 507 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
It is you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
All right. This is Mike from Minneapolis. I guess right off the top, I want to say congrats, hoping for years of happiness to Tim Scott and his new girlfriend.
Oh,
There you go. Well
thank
done.
you. Thank
Well
you.
done.
Wait, we'll let him know.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, you guys probably have better contact. I guess what I wanted to talk about is I grew up in rural Minnesota. And as the years go by, I feel like rural areas in the Midwest, that's the only experience I have, but I feel like rural America is kind of dying.
Kind of dying?
Yeah, economically, people are leaving. Just for example, from my community I grew up in, people are leaving. They can barely even get like a community center built. The only businesses that are really thriving are ag and then just niche industries like car industries or like dealerships, I should say, just from the uptick in demand over COVID. And I don't know if you guys can have someone on or if you have ideas on or any good reads on the future of rural America, because I mean, outside of ag industries, I can't fathom that these places can survive, at least economically, in the future.
Yeah, on Left Reckoning, one, we had Aaron Kowalski on about a year and a half ago, kind of talking about that. He had some good things to say. And we also had Keith Orehal, that's at Keith, Doregel. We had him on Left Reckoning too, and he had this graph that showed prime working age population change in rural counties, and like every county is losing people except certain ones, and a notable one being in North Dakota, the oil field. But besides that, I've saw this my whole life. Like my mom is from a dairy farm in rural North Dakota, and she's basically been saying rural America's over for my entire life, because there's not the sort of investment in those communities took place at a certain time in American history where they were more valuable to, say, like the grain elevator owners and the railroads, and also we needed to continue or complete the taking of indigenous lands and then converting them into farmland. And now that that's over, there's less of an interest in things. And I think the solutions really are healthcare. You need to nationalize health hospitals and stuff like that, because it not only help urban hospitals that are underfunded, but also rural ones that are going under, and things like that. It needs to be investment into the necessities of life. Basically, transportation is another big one.
Yeah,
like Cuba. I know Cuba, when doctors, the first thing they have to do is they have to serve in, I don't know if it's poor or just rural areas in general, for 2 years, I think. So that, and I'm an accountant and I'm just burnt out on being a normal wage cuck. And so I've been thinking about getting into rural development, doing a lot of research on that. And I think the secondary problem is these areas seem to get more and more conservative. I don't know if it's because of the internet or what, but I mean, growing up in North Dakota, Matt, I felt like growing up, everyone used to hate the cops, for example.
Yeah.
They're the most and no one liked them. And now it's they're just gods in these small towns. And I'm just I don't.
Yeah. I think I don't, in North Dakota, it's specific. People hate cops until there's a Native American issue. And I saw that, really starkly in the Dakota Access Pipeline stuff. But also the previous generations, they saw the farm populism. That was a bigger.
Cops would come and take the farms away, is essentially.
Oh yeah, I mean there was literally riots against evictions in Minnesota and stuff like that, and so, but that radicalism has been sort of lost over the course of the neoliberal era and a little bit before that. Hubert Humphrey famously stood up, well in regards to civil rights, but ultimately got kicked the left wing out of the Farm Populism Party in Minnesota, and we're seeing long-term effects of that is we lost the actual like will to fight and liberate people.
Isn't there also largely a dynamic where almost definitionally, like if you're conservative, you're less interested in being around people who are different than you in any way. And if you stay in your hometown, more often than not, you are likely not to be exposed by that. And I would imagine there's a big age, like the age of your average rural person has just gone up.
And also they've been homogenized into like white American as opposed to previous generation where you had all sorts of different, often European, but religious sects and different churches and stuff like that, where people like spoke Norwegian versus German and all these different things. And now it's, white Americans, which hasn't helped in terms of culture.
And the brain drain you've talked about before too, of people.
Yeah. Well, that's the wider economy.
Right.
Yeah.
But people who also might be more liberally inclined, they're going to cities.
Everyone I was on newspaper staffs with, both in high school and my university in Moorhead, Minnesota, they do not live there. They live in Colorado, Arizona, New York.
Everybody's moving to Worcester.
Yeah.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks. Left is best.
Thanks.
I mean, actually, Worcester's population has like grown by like 30% since I left.
What is it? How far is it from Boston? 45 minutes?
The highway is such that it would take you like 55 minutes maybe. Okay. And
is there any public transportation? No.
There's now trains that go in. Like I think even maybe commuter rail. I think they have now. But there's 60,000 more people in a city. When I was there in the 80s. 160,000 people. And now it's up to like 220. It's crazy. Calling from a 612 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Tim from West Michigan.
Tim from West Michigan. What's on your mind?
So I've had Palestine, Israel in my mind quite a bit. Found out earlier this year the deep, dark secret of the family is that Grandpa was born Jewish and just hid it from everybody for his entire life. So that was a fun revelation after both him and Grandma had died. Got to share that with a coworker who's the only other person excited. She's Palestinian. She shared that with a couple people, only like 3 people at work. She's lost 3 cousins in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, jeez.
And she can't share that with anybody at work. I called her and just said, hey, how's everything going? I've been thinking a lot about you, been praying about this. And, she sits there and she goes, well, she feels the need to apologize for Hamas. I go, I know you're Orthodox. You don't want anything to do with any of this. And I kind of try to center it. I'm very active in my church. Try to center it as, Hamas is basically a gang. And they're rooting for everybody to die. They think they're going to get their way from piles of bodies. And Israel's backed by the greatest power in the world. And they're thinking, hey, we're a right-wing government. We're going to get what we want by a pile of bodies. I just wish people as leftists realize we're the only ones with an idea of how to stop this without people dying. Like, don't be embarrassed to share your views. We want actual peace.
Yeah.
Whether it's a 1-state solution, a 2-state solution, it's been wonderful to be able to have catharsis by being able to listen to the show and have the emotion tied to actual states and facts that we have on the ground. I love reading up on this stuff, but being able to have a little bit of that parasocial relationship and go, oh, good, I'm in a county that's voted. The last time we voted Democrat was when we could vote against Lincoln.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I keep hearing what Matt said probably around 2 weeks ago when I think, Sam, you might have been out at that point. And basically what Matt said, and I'm just paraphrasing, is like, if people say you support Hamas, you can confidently point a finger back in their face and say, well, you're supporting this, like, the continued bloodshed and genocide here. And like that second point is not socially accepted in some ways, right? But like you don't need to cower from that. I mean, in terms of like your employment, that's a very real thing, and I sympathize with that. I'm never going to advocate for somebody like, it's incredibly
It's just
entitled.
a job.
Yeah, it's just a job. You can get a new one, right? No, that's a crazy position. But to the best of your ability, like in personal conversations, you shouldn't feel like you have to cower. I think more people are realizing that. Like frickin' John Oliver did a segment on Gaza. The more people talk, the less tenable this becomes. But you just have to be brave, and I know that's a lot to ask.
Appreciate the call.
Thanks, guys.
Good job reaching out to your coworker.
Yeah.
Calling from a 910 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
It is you. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, my name is Pat. I'm calling from the newly renamed Fort Liberty, North Carolina. First off, I just want to say congrats, Emma.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think you realize the damage you've done to the socialist movement by removing you from the market.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that.
No, it's good. I just want to call and say that you guys. So I'm Jewish and a soldier in the U.S. Army, and I hear a lot of really nasty stuff at work. And you guys are like my sanity check. Like your guys' takes on Palestine and just being so rational about everything has really helped to make me feel like I'm not alone over here.
Well, it's a rough time. I think there's a lot of people I know who are just like, losing it because we look around and it's very hard to believe that people are looking at what's going on and not sort of outraged and just, totally despondent. I mean, it is, I got a notice, like my phone tells me how much, like my average phone usage is up like 78% of the week.
time?
And it's just horrible. It's horrible. And and there's nothing more isolating than feeling like I'm reacting to something that seems like it should be so obvious to people, and it's not. And frankly, I'll tell you, it was almost worse during the Iraq War because there wasn't as many sort of like outlets to hear, some sanity. Like it was just everybody's just walking around like nothing matters.
Oh yeah, I'm sure the chilling effect back then was just insane.
It was insane, and you could imagine, like this is sort of second order in this country, right? As opposed to Iraq, when we were actually doing the killing of civilians, and was doing it in response to essentially some people from Saudi Arabia who attacked us.
Yeah, and I mean, I think social media's changed a lot of it too, especially like, how complicit, and maybe Sam, I can ask you this question. Like, I remember, but I was younger, the discussions about how cable news wasn't showing the bodies.
Oh no.
And like, that's not possible if you're on social media. For a lot of people, unless you're in your own like really, really insular algorithm, you're seeing dead children. You're seeing a 2-year-old whose head is completely open and brain coming out of it. Like, you're seeing all that. So it's just more difficult to control the narrative, even though
and you're actually hearing Palestinians talk.
Yeah, even though Israel done it very successfully for quite a while. It's just not tenable right now if you're paying attention.
No, it's not. I mean, like, just the other day I saw a picture of like 5 kids on a stretcher, and like I immediately just broke down. And yeah, like trying to show guys at work what's going on and just having it blown back in my face like I'm anti-Semitic or I'm anti-American or something is just insane to me. And like, if you guys did this, you would literally be in like a prison right now. But
yeah,
It has been sort of fascinating to see the charges of anti-Semitism launched at Jews who have a problem with this. I mean, honestly, like I think in the coming months and years, the sort of like backlash against Zionism from Jews who will resent their Judaism, and both from like an identity perspective and from like a theological perspective, being sort of intertwined with what supposedly is Zionism. You know, like I said, I think there's arguments as to like, you know, where Zionism has gone and where it could have gone, et cetera, potentially.
Well, it's
but
like always rotten.
I mean, I think, you know, I mean, I think there's an argument. I think that's a pretty strong argument. I think, you know, if you go back to like, you know, 1800s and the beginning of the 1900s.
Pappy mentioned that moment in the 20s too.
Yes, that there were times where it's like we envision a racial, multi-ethnic state that, you know, and that sort of went by the wayside at one point. But we're gonna have a guest, I think, talk about that right next week, next Monday. Okay. But hey, appreciate the call. Hang in there.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right.
What?
Oh.
I think he was going to say left is best.
Left. There you go.
I agree. Calling from an 832 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello?
Hello?
Hi, this is Marcos from Baytown, Texas.
Marcos from Texas. What's on your mind?
I kind of wanted to piggyback off the last few callers because I've just been really shaken up seeing how much the desensitization and dehumanization of Palestinians has been working, you know.
Yeah.
For example, I just saw a video from David Pakman, and I'm sorry for being a little shaky.
You're good.
Where he was taking calls from his viewers, and I kid you not, it was like 4 calls, and pretty much all of them were expressing some form of like pro-Zionism. And it's like, to me, I don't understand how so many people have been distracted when there is so many children that are without power, without food, without water. And people are heavily focused on left-wing, quote-unquote, left-wing anti-Semitism as they live in a country where they can peacefully go about their lives. And I don't know, it's just really been messing with me this past few days.
Yeah, it's difficult, man. And you know, I mean, there is anti-Semitism. It exists, but the idea that in any way justifies or excuses or, you know, trumps the material suffering that is taking place right now is just, to me, sort of like shocking.
Well, you know, the talking about anti-Semitism in this country, like we should be decrying the hate crimes on the Islamophobic and anti-Semitic hate crimes and increase in hate that we're seeing in this country, and a peace would really go a long way towards, I think, hopefully smoothing some of that over. But for that to be the only focus of your coverage, or like the primary focus of your coverage, as a child
propaganda
dies every 10 minutes, is feeding into the Israeli government's propaganda, to Matt's point. And it's really, in my opinion, Western and self-involved, and like myopic in a way where you're only seeing politics really from the domestic perspective and like how it affects you in your day-to-day life. And as opposed to like really trying to do the hard work of reckoning with what it must be like to be in a war zone and have dozens of your family members die, or have this trauma of constantly feeling like you might die, dragging your, family on foot to southern Gaza, and your only option in this humanitarian pause being advocated for by the Biden administration is lose your home forever or die. Or lose your home forever, and then on your way to the southern border, get shot down by an Israeli bomb and die. Like, how is that not the central part of your coverage? And if that's
because you're trying to defend an ethno state and you don't want to admit that. That's why. Like this is the exact same thing. Right. I went into the formation of AIPAC in 1953. It was around the Kibbutz massacre, which in retaliation for a murder of an Israeli woman. Israel just went in and massacred like 60 people indiscriminately, and that was starting to look bad, including like Alan Dulles was like, maybe we should make aid contingent on certain things. And this is just a summary of how 972 summarized the response to that in an article called How the Israeli Media Covers Massacres, Lessons from 1943. And this is how they summarized it briefly. The killing was justified. The terrorists hit among the civilian population. The West is anti-Semitic. And on second thought, perhaps the whole thing never actually happened. Like, we're just seeing the exact same thing again. And it's all because you don't want to actually address the fundamental brutality of the project.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to clarify a little, because maybe the way I put it doesn't make it clear. The reason I was so shaken up is because one of his callers called in and it literally said they were planning on voting for someone like Nikki Haley because they felt like the Democrats were not against Hamas enough. And in my opinion, I just can't fathom how someone supposedly on the left, which I don't necessarily doubt Paxton is on the left, but how you cover this conflict in such a way that is something your viewers come away with thinking is a rational thing to think.
I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think, frankly, well, for some Jewish liberals, there has been you are raised with, it's about indoctrination. It is about, sort of years of being essentially taught that Palestinian lives on some level do not matter, that even Palestinians themselves do not care about their children. This is on top of the sort of the general sort of like, sometimes it's harder to empathize with people from a different culture because the same signifiers are not there. These people eat with a chopstick and not a fork. I don't understand it, that type of thing.
Yeah.
But in the case of like, I know from my own youth that people are indoctrinated, and crossing that sort of like divide and sort of like it's too hard of a lift for people. And then, once you have a fundamental understanding that Palestinians are not people, then everything else sort of like
melts away.
Well, it just makes it easier. The logic just makes more sense, right? I mean, and that's the whole practice. I mean, that's
dehumanization.
Exactly. And that's why it works.
I spoke to somebody, not a close friend, but a friend who was a Jewish person my age, who had posted something about the apartheid and was, and I just sent her a message and said, that's awesome. Like, kudos to you. And we had a dialogue, and she said, at some level, I do feel like every Muslim person wants to kill me. And I have to work through that fear because that's kind of what I felt like I was taught growing up. She's on the right side, but she says in the back of my mind, like, that's still something that I feel. And like, it's amazingly brave to have the moral fortitude to overcome that, but like, that's something I'll never understand. But it also just speaks to what Sam is saying.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like the first time I read like
I'm gonna let you go. The call's getting feedback.
like about the Black Panthers or something like that. When I was like in my late teens, and there's a veil you have to cross of like what. This is kind of scary. These people these people hate me and that sort of thing. And that's a veil of ignorance that people actually do need to be encouraged to cross, especially on this end, because you do see a lot of like dismissal of certain historical points that are made by like the best Israeli historians, and acting as if it's just all freshmen using the word apartheid and stuff like that, as opposed to like, you know, members of the ANC and stuff like that.
The United Nations.
Shin Bet.
Yeah, Shin Bet.
Or, you know, I mean, again, that's, you know, a lot of times why I don't get into the sort of like, you know, who has more moral righteousness in this conflict, because it is impossible to keep going back and forth. And when someone can argue that, like, well, you know, the Jews were there in 2000 or 5000 type of, like, it's just.
You could just say the Palestinians were there in 1850.
Yeah,
without a doubt. And it is sort of, you know, I have a lot of these conversations with other Jews, frankly, and it's a slow process of like dropping one link at a time and being like, I don't know what to make of this, but I mean, look at the populations actually in 1900. There were 2% Jews in Palestine.
Yeah.
You know, you can look at like when 1947 essentially happens, and it just there's a huge jump. But you could also not a lot of people know that.
You could also point to like that settler interview with the Chotiner, which is like, yeah, we were taking their land because we don't want a two-state solution. We want the whole thing.
Well, of course. That's the thing, is that when people say to me like, you know, I really hope for a two-state solution, and I'm like, you understand that they would have to get 700,000 settlers out of the West Bank, many of whom are extremely willing to resort to violence. And
that New Yorker interview with the settler, we should check that out. Sorry, go on.
The reason why they're there is exactly because 20, 30 years ago, people like Netanyahu and Sharon knew that it would be difficult if you put the facts on the ground. That's what I don't even, it's possible even that saying was invented.
I think it is, yeah.
Yeah. One of the more dishonest talking points I'm seeing about the term genocide is like, you're seeing people say, well, look, the population of Palestinians increased during this period. I mean, first of all, no one is saying that the genocide or the crimes of genocide began, I would say, I mean, look, I would say it's ethnic cleansing, and now we're in the midst of indiscriminate killing, which can be described as crimes of genocide. Like, you know, we're seeing death in this current moment at a toll that we had not seen previously in these like sparks of violence, even though, yes, the Israeli government every year kills way more Palestinians than Hamas kills Israelis.
People say like the two-state solution ain't happening, but what people that are actually like really close to it say is the one-state reality is happening. And also, people said the exact same thing about in South Africa.
Yeah.
That the whites and the blacks can't live together. It'll be massacres. And there's one, and Ilan Pappy has a book, Israel and South Africa. One of the essays is like, yeah, I was laughed in 1987 out of an academic conference because I said that apartheid is shaky. And I think that, look, like two states solution, that's also a utopia. There are different utopias on offer. One is the Zionist extermination. One is two state and one is one state. I think we're moving towards the one state. We want to talk about this here. Oh yeah, there it is.
I don't know. I mean, did you see this, Sam? This
I haven't read this yet. I've heard about it, though.
This is what I was mentioning. Yeah. In Israel, there's a lot of support for settlements, and this is why there have been right-wing governments for so many years. The world, especially the United States, thinks there is an option for a Palestinian state, and if we continue to build communities, then we block the option for a Palestinian state. We want to close the option for a Palestinian state, and the world wants to leave the option open. It's very simple to understand. It's also, this is exactly why you have every Zionist asking you, do you agree that Israel has a right to exist? Because none of them believe that Palestine does.
Yeah, that was Isaac Chotner interviewing Daniela Weiss, who is a prominent settlement activist in the West Bank and former mayor of Kedumim, an Israeli settlement in the West Bank.
I'm sorry, scroll down more. Like, there are some real money quotes in here. This question here, when Israel pulled out of Gaza in 2005, it also closed down settlements in the region. This was under the Sharon government, and there's been talk by some settlers since October 7th about the need to repopulate Gaza with settlements. What are your feelings about what should happen with Gaza right now? Oh, wait, that's not...
They want to build in Gaza.
Sorry, this was the one I wanted. So you think it was a mistake to pull out of settlements nearly 20 years ago? It was a mistake. She also has a quote saying later, he asked her, where should the Palestinians in Gaza go? To Sinai, to Egypt, to Turkey. They're not Egyptian or Turkish, though. Why would they go to Turkey? Okay, the Ukrainians are not French, but when the war started, they went to many countries. Their country was being bombed, and so many of them fled west. And then she says, and Gazan people are dying to go to other places. I think Ukrainians want to go to Europe because they didn't want to get bombed. And then she says, and the Gazan people want to get bombed by us. So essentially, she's saying bomb or leave or bomb. If you don't leave, leave or get bombed. And she essentially explains that she has a right to the land intrinsically, religiously, and nothing's going to stop her.
More importantly, like I saw Palestinians, like, why is any of this new to people? This is barely different than like the entirety. Like, it's accelerated under Likud and stuff like this, but you can find quotes like this from any founding father of Israel.
Yeah.
All right, final call. Calling from a 419 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah, who's this? Where are you calling from?
So my name is Garrett. I'm calling from Washington.
Garrett from Washington. What's on your mind?
So yeah, we're going to talk about Israel and Palestine. I live across the river from Portland, in Vancouver, home of Marie Glausenkamp Perez. And I've been working with the local chapter of BSA to try to focus on like a targeted BDS campaign. And what I've noticed is, the BDS website has specific targets that they're focused on, but we're interested in using labor power to target companies that the city does business with. And I guess I'm calling to ask for people who have experience working with they have like technical computer skills.
You're looking for help with technical computers?
Yeah.
The best thing to do probably is go to the Discord and ask around there.
Okay, yeah, that's a good idea.
You're hoping people are going to contact you to help with this project.
Yeah, what would be nice is if we had some sort of a website where other folks who are interested in doing like localized BDS campaigns can just put in the names of businesses and see if they have direct ties with Israel, or maybe put in the name of a city and see if they have direct ties to Israel.
I get you. I think the Discord's probably the best place for that.
All right, guys. Well, thanks for taking my call.
Thanks.
Left is best. Take care.
You do it. All right, should we take one more? Got one more on the line. Been on the phone 49 minutes. Calling from a 207 area code. You are actually the final caller of the day. And they dropped.
Sad.
Too much pressure.
Too bad. So sad. Should we do? You want to do number 10? Is that worth doing?
Yeah.
Okay. They bring this out I don't even know if this has ever been effective. This has always been this is like one of the most consistent thing with the Republicans. And it's just such a strange thing to decry, which is the way the Democrats are running this year is that they want to provide things to their voters.
Bribes.
Yeah, bribes in the form of healthcare and commodified.
and this, we should be clear, this is not a new thing. Like I say, Mitt Romney in 2012 was like, there's takers and there's makers, and 47%, and they're just paying off their voters.
Yeah, by delivering things for their voters. The Democrats are operating in their mind in a representative democracy.
Anyway, let's do some tax cuts.
But also, I remember. Do you remember the first thing that Donald Trump did, like after he was elected? He went down to the 21 Club in New York City. Is that what it is? The 21 Club or the 21st Club? I can't remember.
Right.
And there was video of him walking through there, putting his hand on people's shoulders, basically going like this wealthy restaurant. I'm cutting your taxes. I'm cutting your taxes. I'm putting money in your pocket. But here is this dude, Rob Finnerty, from Newsmax.
The party's got to wake up. Last night we went deep on the likely fraudulent fundraising arm of the DNC, known as Act Blue, and also the plan to exploit abortion in 2024 as Republicans continue to run from this issue and they can't coalesce on something common sense. Kamala's husband has described Democrats' path to victory in 2024 as Dobbs and democracy. Fear tactics. That is all they have next year because they have nothing else to sell. They've ruined everything else. But they'll stop at nothing to win, already importing mass amounts of third world migrants into this country while sending back only the ones who are escaping socialism because they won't vote the way this government wants them to. Another reminder of what they're capable of. In 2021, Biden signed an executive order mandating our federal agencies evaluate ways in which the agency can, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, promote voter registration and voter participation. So what does that mean? Well, not only is the Democrat Party taking half of your paycheck and giving it away to millions of Americans on the dole, now Joe Biden is mandating government agencies spend their time and spend your money seeking to register as much of America's dead weight as they possibly can to vote. They've signed up millions of people over the last 2 years using this policy, this executive order. They're using your tax dollars to ruin this country. The only people that they want voting are those dependent on the government, the people not producing anything. What's that sound like to you? Long ago, in parts of this country, only landowners could vote. Now we're seeking the exact opposite of that, a political party actively working to empower the freeloaders. Sounds like a great idea, right? Because as this country is destroyed, the one upside is that the government will attain a lot more power. If the RNC doesn't wake up to the beast that we are up against in 2024, then the RNC is toast.
Sure, dude.
I should be clear. That's Rob Schmidt.
You got the Robs confused.
Other Newsmax.
Yeah, Rob Finnerty would never talk like that. I love the idea that the government is going to get more power over a destroyed country. Not sure exactly what the value of that is. And I love the fact, wait does he find out that our tax dollars actually also pay for the actual elections?
What?
Yes. So not just in registering people to vote, but also pays for the elections.
I don't know, kind of suspicious.
He kind of got up to a point where sounded like he may be inviting refugees from, say, Venezuela, saying, well, you don't want them to come if they're escaping socialism. It's like, I welcome all refugees. I think we have plenty of space in this country for refugees from all sorts of different trouble areas. But the problem with Venezuela isn't that Maduro is like, I'm going to do a socialism on our oil industry and basically cut it by like a third or maybe even like a half. That was American government policy that did that to that country.
It was our sanctions that did what they were supposed to do, which is immiserate a population and make them desperate so that they turn against their government. I mean, that's the stated purpose of it, but still creates suffering.
Kind of escaping American policies.
It really is like amazing how resentful they are of democracy. It kind of just comes, that's really what it boils down to. The Republican Party knows that they can't win the majority of people, and so when Democrats do what's in their interests, is like the more people vote, the more Democrats are going to have success. That's in some way nefarious because he wants just landowners, property owners, rich white guys
It is amazing to longingly cite when we used to just allow property owners to vote.
Yeah,
Like,
is.
I mean,
It's both pretty anti-woman and also anti-anybody who's not white. So like
that's just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's just a coincidence, right? I shouldn't besmirch him. He's just very pro property owner.
Yeah,
exactly.
Who among us is not pro landed gentry? Huh?
I mean,
final IMs of the day. 5 more. The hidden one. Tim Pool is heartbroken today.
God, someone made that joke to me and I almost threw up.
Jay Tingle. Have Emma and her betrothed submitted the engagement announcement to the New York Times to publicate? For publication?
We've talked way too much about it to make me like even comfortable here. Like I don't it's thank you for all the congratulations, but no more. No more.
Trey Gowdy owns 3 wigs, maybe more since he has a TV show. The Giants were beaten by their dreaded rivals 3 times last season. That is truly humiliating achievement. Then they had the bark stripped off them by the same hated club in the game won this season.
Yep, tank.
The trajectory of the Washington team after the Giants beat them 3 times in 1986.
I hope the Giants don't win one more game this season. Caleb Williams, baby.
Matty Moron. I don't congratulate Emma.
Whoa. Whoa.
Haircut hippie. Don't want to be considered a slacker, Emma. Big congrats.
Thank you.
2 more. Bradley Fan Club. Crew, can I get an Emma a shofar for a close personal friend who has just got engaged? Left his best. They want an Emma.
Oh, that's what I do when I can't reach the soundboard.
There you go. And the final IM of the day. See here. It is Catfish James. Obligatory congratulations to Emma. Of course, AMR crew. Any thoughts on David Cameron coming back?
Oh, God. Yeah.
And another even bigger Brexit on the way soon.
Tony Blair also being floated
weaseling
by
his way. Yeah. What, like for the Middle East envoy?
He
or something?
can lead the new British Mandate of Palestine.
Oh.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Folks, see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks you. I guess somehow I lost my drive